Hey, what's up guys? Have you ever felt stuck with your landscape photography? Like no matter what you did going out into the field, you couldn't just get a grasp on why you were feeling stuck or having a creative block in landscape photography. In this video, I'm gonna be talking about different ways that you can break out of that creative rut and start taking photos that you love once again. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome into the channel. My name is David Johnston, and on this channel we talk landscape photography, all the way from gear reviews, in-field tutorials, as well as post-processing tutorials. So if you're into landscape photography, if you want to get better and improve your photos, subscribe to this channel and be sure to ring the bell so that you can be notified when we come out with new videos that are going to help you improve too. Now in this video, like I alluded to in the intro, what we're talking about is creative ruts. And I know creative ruts more than anybody. And I think one of the solaces of landscape photography is that no matter how big or how famous you get, famous being the strange word there because no one is actually like LeBron James famous, no matter how big you get, every single person goes through a creative rut. We're all the same. We're on the same boat of creative artists trying to portray our image of what we see in nature. So creative ruts are really something that's impacted me in my life. You know, when I first started out in landscape photography, I was going to some of the most amazing places in the United States, leading workshops, meeting people, shooting with some of my favorite photographers, and I was able to travel all over. But something was a little bit different. Like I wasn't enjoying myself in the field like I thought I was going to be. I was having moments of where I wished I would have been home instead, and moments where I looked at the images that I was creating, and while they were good, I was kind of just like, this is not really what I want to do creatively here. So I actually took a break of 6 months and I didn't touch my camera at all. And while I wouldn't recommend that for everybody, taking a break can be a respite for a lot of people and kind of this step back to see what you were doing. But I want to share some creative tips of when I was coming back, what brought me out of that rut, and what really got me excited about landscape photography again. So I think one of the biggest things you can do to break out of that creative rut is try something new. This can be something as simple as trying a new lens for landscape photography. And I wouldn't even talk about like getting a new camera. That's a little bit overkill and it doesn't really help you creatively. And not to mention puts a huge burden on your finances because cameras typically cost more than lenses do. So when you get a new lens, even like some small macro lens or 50mm lens that doesn't cost a whole lot of money, you can really get into some new creative types of photography. I think a lot of interesting things that we're seeing right now in landscape photography, especially with something like lens baby macros with those velvety looks and specific looks to specific lenses for landscapes and naturescapes. So looking into something like that, or getting a macro lens, your classic macro, a 50mm, trying to take landscapes with a 100 to 400 telephoto lens. All these things can help you see the landscape in a whole different way, frame up subjects in a new way, and find different ways of photographing the places that you even go to over and over and over. These are things that are gonna help you see differently of what your creative vision is and try to frame up the locations that you go shoot, typically more than once, and revisit. This is going to give you a new look on those places and new ideas too. Now, I think new concepts and large projects are a really good way to break creative ruts too. And this doesn't have to be using your camera. This can be going back through your old photos and really finding out which ones are your favorite, critiquing them for yourself, and then even making something like a photo book. This can be something like a creative project of a single location and finding multiple different ways of photographing that location to make an interesting book that tells a story. Or just creating an ebook for some of your fans, some of your followers, even if it is just sharing it for free on social media, a free download link, so that you can see your progress and see how much progress you've made shooting one location and finding different ways to compose a subject, compose a location, and really just portray your style to your audience a little bit better without even having to pick up the camera. Now, these last two things are two of the biggest ways that helped me break out of my creative rut when I was in this downward spiral of creative abyss. And one of the ways was not even shooting landscapes at all. I took a completely different approach and abandoned landscape photography totally. I was actually living in Haiti as a missionary for 2 years while I was going through this. And what typically brought me out of it was shooting portraits of people who own small businesses in Haiti, locals who own small businesses, coffee roasters. I would do video projects with them. One of my favorite things to do was following my wife around, who's a midwife, and would go visit her patients that had just given birth. And I would take portraits of them holding their baby, their newborn portrait. And typically many of these people had never seen their photo taken at all on a large mirrorless or DSLR camera. So it was a really special moment for me to be able to go out there, learn what the light was doing and how it was impacting the scene, and not to mention learning about skin tones and how shadows affect things and how you can frame up windows of people and look through specific lighting situations to frame up a scene very specifically. All this helped me in landscape photography. It doesn't mean that you do that one type of genre over and over. You can break out of that genre anytime you want and go back to landscape photography. But this is really what brought me out of this creative rut, seeing other scenes and other genres using what I knew in landscape photography gave me new ideas moving forward with light, with color tones, and how I can frame up things creatively in nature. And then lastly, the fourth thing is just slow down, shoot slower. I think when we get in these creative ruts and our mind just becomes this tomb that we're trapped in, and our thoughts just race over and over, and it becomes this loud cyclical noise in our mind. And what happens with that is we tend to rush in the landscape. I mean, I was the biggest rusher in landscape photography and would go out and just fly through a scene and try to just photograph something really quickly and move on. When I got back from Haiti and I really buckled down again with landscape photography, what happened is I implemented mindfulness meditation into my landscape photography workflow in the field, and I really inspected the noises that were going on, the smells around me, what I saw, what I tasted, what I felt physically, and it really helped me frame up more unique photographs of the location because I was in tune with a lot of things going on. Now, that doesn't mean you have to actually meditate in the field and grow your hair out and become a hippie and wear those wool ponchos that they have. I'm talking about just going out, slowing down in nature, really listening and seeing and smelling everything going on around you, even if they are bad smells, and figuring out what's creating all of these noises and how do you incorporate it into the composition to frame up a more creative photograph. Listen, if you are going through a rut, I totally feel for you. And I'm sorry because I know what that feels like. But I really think implementing some of these tips into your workflow, into your landscape photography, or just taking a break and discovering other genres of photography or a new project is gonna help you break out of this. Remember, there is no specific timeline for each person's creative rut. This could honestly last for a long time, or this could last for only a couple weeks. So you really have to be patient through the process. And I would encourage you, if you're having trouble, if you want more information on how I got out of mine, feel free to email me at davidjohnstonphoto@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to talk with you on how you can work through this creative rut and we can get through this together.